Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Armando Urban, and I'm a member of the education team at the International Testing Agency. It is my pleasure to welcome you to today's session, and thank you for joining us from wherever you are in the world. Before we dive into today's topic, please allow me to do some housekeeping. We are delivering this webinar in 5 different languages. On your Zoom menu, you should see a button called Interpretation. By clicking on this icon, you can select a channel with your favorite language. I will present this session in English, but you can also listen into Arabic, French, Russian, or Spanish. Today's webinar is part of our educational monthly series that are designed to tackle key anti-doping topics, and of course, to raise clean sport awareness. As for all of our sessions, we encourage debate, interaction, and questions, and we trust you will join us upholding the values of fairness, respect, and integrity. Then some other housekeeping points. Please use the chat function to tell us the sport you are representing, whether you are an athlete, athlete support personnel, perhaps you are an educator, or representing another international federation. So please feel free to use the chat. And I want to take a moment here to welcome all of you who already say something in the chat. Thank you, and it's great to see so many of you here. Welcome to our friends from Malaysia fencing, Mauritius, South Africa, Iran, Switzerland, Diana from Panama, table tennis, Zimbabwe, Brazil, IGF. Welcome, Alessandro. Thank you for being with us today. And we have many, many more. Thank you for joining us today. A reminder that you can use the Q&A function to ask any questions about today's topic, and we will leave some time at the end of the session to address this. Please note that this webinar is being recorded, and also this webinar will be available on our website and YouTube channel, of course, for those who cannot attend the live session. As always, I'm pleased to give recognition to our official presenting partner, Inform Sport. Thanks to their investment, we are able to offer our webinar program in 5 different languages. Inform Sport is a global certification program for supplements that test products for substances prohibited in sport. As you probably know, supplement contamination continues to be one of the leading causes of inadvertent doping. So, we encourage all athletes and athlete support personnel joining us today to check sport.wetestyourtrust.com. The ITA is proud to be recognized by UNESCO as a leading international organization for the delivery of anti-doping programs. And of course, this webinar is delivered with the support of the UNESCO International Convention Against Doping in Sport. All right, then, without any further delay, let's move on to today's topic. And before we start, I'm thrilled to present the panelists joining our conversation today. First, I would like to welcome Krisztina Bedocs. Krisztina is a national team kayaker, 3-time European champion, and a 5 times World Championship medalist. And of course, she has several years of experience with filing her whereabouts as an athlete in a testing pool. We're thrilled to have Krisztina with us today, and I would like to invite Krisztina to please turn on camera and microphone, as we are eagerly looking forward to hearing her insights. Welcome, Krisztina, and the floor is yours.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Armando, for the invitation. It's a real pleasure to be here and discuss this topic with you. I'm sure we will all have a better understanding of ADAMS and whereabouts after this webinar. And I hope we can solve all the questions, doubts, and mysteries related to the system together. Thank you.
Thank you, Krisztina, for that kind of message. And I will be back with you in just a moment. Next, I would like to welcome also my colleague, Kate Hovrjaka, Athlete Support Officer at the International Testing Agency. Kate has more than 4 years of experience in the field of anti-doping. During this time, she has worked mainly with RTP athletes, and beyond that, Kate takes her passion for anti-doping into creating also educational tools for athletes, including training videos, tutorials, FAQs, and other resources tailored for RTP athletes. Kate, welcome to this webinar. Thank you for your time and your expertise, and the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Armando, for the introduction and for having me on this webinar. I'm really excited to dive into today's topics with you and Krisztina and everyone who's attending. So big welcome to everybody.
Thank you, Kate, and thank you for staying with us. As a reminder, we will leave some time at the end of the session for additional questions. So please use the Q&A box at any time. Today, you will also see some poll questions popping up on your screen. Your answers will be totally anonymous, so please don't be shy to participate, and also feel free to send a few comments in the chat. And please, of course, get involved in the conversation. So as a warm-up, let's go straight with our first poll question of the day, which will appear on your screen at any moment. And the question is, are you part of a testing pool for those who are joining us today? And the possible answers are yes, no, perhaps no, but I have been previously in a testing pool. No, but an athlete I work with is in a testing pool, or I don't know. And I can see that your votes are coming in. Thank you very much for taking part. And I can see that we have a favorite one, but I will wait just a couple of more seconds. All right, then let's close the poll and share the results with the audience. And we can see that the most popular answer was that no, the majority of you joining us today are not part of a testing pool, but some of you actually are, and also some of you work with athletes included in a testing pool. Okay, then let's move on. I understand that being an athlete is not just a walk in the park. The intense training, looking after your nutrition, your body, and making sure you recover well, definitely it's not easy. And I also know that it's not just about performing on the field. You got many other responsibilities like school, work, friends, and family. And off top of all of that, there are also responsibilities around anti-doping. Especially when it comes for sure for Whereabout submissions. No need to stress, because today we're diving into this topic to make sure the process is easier for you. We will talk also about everyday situations that you might encounter while submitting your Whereabouts. And as I just mentioned, our aim and the aim of this session is to simplify this process for you and make sure you are on the right path. For those of you who might be joining us for the first time today and might not be familiar with today's topic, let's kick off the session with a brief introduction on Whereabouts. As you can see on your screen, if you can go back, please, there are 11 types of anti-doping regulations clearly set out in the code. The first 4 apply to athletes only, as these 4 ADRVs can only be committed in relation to doping control or an athlete being tested. The rest of the ADRVs, 2.5 to 2.11, apply not just to athletes, but to coaches, team doctors, administrators, and all other support personnel. For the purposes of today's session, we will briefly touch on 2.4, which is Whereabouts failures. First, what is Whereabouts information? Whereabouts information in anti-doping, of course, refers to the detailed and accurate data that athletes are required to provide regarding their location and the activities outside of competition. This information is submitted to anti-doping organizations through designated systems like ADAMS, which is the Anti-Doping Administration and Management System. And of course, we will discuss this in just a moment. But this is a platform where you can submit all your information at any time, at any moment. Also, it's important to know that within the code, there is a specific article that refers to Whereabouts failures, or sometimes also known as the 3-strike rule. And what do you need to know? This rule applies to athletes who are in a registered testing pool. That means that any combination of 3 missed tests or filing failures within a 12-month period will be considered as an ADRV. RTP athletes have the obligation to provide accurate and complete whereabouts information. And as we just mentioned before, testing is always without prior notice. And that means that athletes can be tested at any time, at any moment. And we'll discuss more about these different requirements in just a moment. Now, I would like to welcome back Krisztina. Krisztina has a wealth of experiences to share with us, not only about her sport, but also as part of a testing pool for many, many years. And before I give the floor to Krisztina, let's watch a short video of her amazing career. All right, so we hope that you enjoyed the video. So welcome back, Krisztina. Great to have you with us. And I think we can just give you the floor, and perhaps you can share a little bit of your background, your sport, as we saw on the video, and some of your achievements. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, so I started kayaking with the age of 14, and I really liked the atmosphere, so I just kept on training for pure enjoyment and fun. Then later I started my studies. I did economics, and during this time, sport got a little bit off the road. So I started my professional sports career a little bit later than average. I was 25 already when I qualified for my first international race, which was a European Championship. And at the same event, I could get on the podium 2 times. That was the point when I got even more hungry, and I felt like I need to explore my limits more. These 2 medals were followed by 10 more from World and European Championships. And I must admit that success made me a little bit addicted. During the last 10 years, I tried myself in real life as well, working at the field of my studies, but sport kept on calling me back. Of course, I cannot do this forever, but this is the field where I feel like I could leverage my skills, abilities, and mix my knowledge from my studies and from all these years I have spent in the elite sport as an athlete.
Thank you, Krisztina. Well, your sport and professional career is quite extraordinary. I must say, well done for your amazing career, not only on the field, but also out of the field. Before we go deep into today's topic, and perhaps this question goes also for you, Krisztina, in your opinion, why is the whereabouts system important for athletes, or I would say, why is important for you?
So being a part of a testing pool is, as an athlete, comes with significant privileges and recognitions that extend beyond the realm of competition. This means a commitment to personal excellence in sports and the broader ideals of integrity, fairness, and clear competition. For me, being part of the testing pool is considered a privilege because of several reasons. Athletes in the testing pool actively contribute to upholding the principles of fair play and clean sport. We are willingly subjecting ourselves to regular anti-doping tests. That's how we demonstrate our dedication to competing on a level playing field where success is achieved through skill, training, and determination, rather than the use of performance-enhancing substances. As an example, many of the athletes proudly do social media posts about their doping control forms, demonstrating the importance of the anti-doping activities. Another aspect could be that joining a testing pool aligns with an athlete's values of honesty, respect, and sportsmanship. It shows a commitment to the core principles of sport, emphasizing the importance of personal growth, teamwork, and striving for excellence without cutting the corners. Athletes in testing pools serve as role models for both aspiring athletes and the general public. Their dedication to clean competition sets a high standard for others to follow, inspiring future generations to achieve their goals through hard work and determination. Another aspect is that athletes in testing pools can gain recognition and respect, not only within their sports community, but also among fans and enthusiasts. Their commitment to integrity and adherence to anti-doping regulation enhance athletes' credibility and contribute to a positive image of themselves and their sport. By participating in anti-doping testing, athletes are actively contributing to the efforts aimed at eliminating the use of banned substances from sport. This collective commitment helps maintain the integrity of competition and ensures that success is based on natural talent and dedicated training. Athletes in testing pools become part of a community that shares a common goal, the preservation of fair and clean competition. This shared commitment fosters a sense of unity among athletes who understand the importance of maintaining the integrity in their sport.
Thank you very much, Krisztina, for that very impactful message. Indeed, like you said, being part of a testing pool equals not just excellence, but also the integrity in sports. What if you also take us back to the time when you first found out that you were going to be part of a testing pool? Perhaps if you can tell us a story of what was going on. Were you perhaps in the middle of a training, a competition, traveling, or maybe even at school? How did you get the news of being included? And I guess all the athletes joining us today will be really curious to know how this process worked for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was 29 years old when I was first included into the testing pool. I received an email. It happened in December 2017. December is the month when the previous season is finished and the new season starts. We have no competitions at this time, so I think I was just at home. If I remember well, it was the International Canoe Federation responsible for informing the federations and the national anti-doping agencies at the time. And they forwarded us athletes this group email. I remember we received this email, 6 of us within my team. We were also verbally informed by the federation in advance that some of us might be picked for the testing pool. So in this email, we received an attached notice of inclusion to ICF ITP. That's how it was called at that time, so International Testing Pool. And we also received another document with the details of the whereabouts requirements. When I received this email, it was not something which made me scared. It rather made me proud, because it meant to me that I became part of a kind of elite athlete group. So I was actually really excited about it, and I was like a good student. I went through the instructions and sent the documents I needed to sign and send back. So as soon as I received my login data, I logged into the system and did everything as was written on the papers.
Thank you, Krisztina. And as you said, you were a very, very good student by going through all the instructions. What if you could you share some of the initial steps you took when you also received this inclusion? And also, perhaps if you can go in more detail about the actual content of the notification.
Yes, so as step one, I carefully read the attached documents. There was a lot of information, and that was the first time I met this information. So the whereabouts requirements was the most important, what I read first. The other document, it was called the Letter of Inclusion, which includes an overview of the essential aspects of RTP, TP athlete obligations as set out by the International Federation or National Anti-Doping Agency and the World Anti-Doping Code. So each athlete is required to acknowledge their inclusion by returning an acknowledgement form via email to the anti-doping organization with their signature. So that's what I was also doing. This inclusion letter contains all necessary information an athlete needs to know to successfully submit his or her whereabouts information. So in summary, the contests are the purpose of the inclusion, whereabouts requirements, the quarterly deadlines, sanctions for non-compliance. So if you have a missed test or filing failure, and it also contains how to submit whereabouts.
Thank you, Krisztina. If I may ask also, how often did you have to update your whereabouts?
So I had to update my whereabouts 4 times per year before each quarter starts. So the first one was in December, which was for quarter 1, meaning from January till March. So I just did it 4 times a year.
All right. Well, thank you, Krisztina. And I would say following on your previous insight, let's now briefly touch into the concept of what is known as quarterly submissions. In a nutshell, I would say that you need to share a 3-month plan with your whereabouts information before each new quarter kicks off. To be precise, you got until the 15th of the month before the quarter begins to do this, as just Krisztina mentioned. For example, for quarter 1, which starts on 1st of January and ends on the 31st of March, the deadline is on the 15th of the previous month. And this is the same process for all 4 quarters of the year. Now, I get that you might not have every single detail map out for the entire 3 months. So no worries, that's not a reason to miss the deadline. Just give your best shot at providing your whereabouts information for each day. And of course, do it on the right time and before the deadline. And also, if your plans change after your initial submission, that's also absolutely fine. Just make sure that you update your whereabouts as soon as possible. This will help everything to be accurate and in line with the anti-doping rules. And remember that it's all about keeping the game fair. Now, what about if we share another poll questions with the audience? And here's the question. Can an athlete delegate the submission of the whereabouts to another person? The possible answers are yes, no, or I don't know. And let's give everybody a couple of seconds and let's close the poll. And share the results with the audience. Now I will direct this question and answer to Kate. Kate, based on your expertise managing whereabouts submissions, is it common for athletes to delegate this task to members of their entourage, or for instance, could it be their parents, or what's the most common approach that you have seen during your practice?
Yes, so it is quite common to delegate the submission of your whereabouts to another person, and all athletes are allowed to do that. and delegate the submission to an agent or someone that they trust, who can submit their whereabouts accurately and in a timely manner before the quarterly deadlines. The athletes simply need to fill out an agent form, which can be found in the notification of inclusion, and return it back to us. This can be a very good alternative for athletes who have very busy schedules, especially those who work with assistants and agents on a daily basis. However, there is one thing which is very important to be aware of. In case there is any miscommunication between an athlete and a person managing their whereabouts, an athlete remains fully responsible for any filing failures and missed tests. So if you decide to delegate the submission of your whereabouts to another person, I would advise to choose someone trustworthy and make sure that you're on the same page with that person in terms of what's happening in your schedule.
Thank you, Kate. And I would like to direct my next question to you as well. Is it possible for Krisztina or any athlete to be part of a different kind of testing pool? And do these pools come with variations in terms of responsibilities and requirements?
So there are only two pools which require an athlete to submit whereabouts information, which are a testing pool and a registered testing pool. In a nutshell, both are a list of athletes, which is established by an international federation or a national anti-doping organization. We can consider a registered testing pool as the primary one because it is the highest tier pool of international or national level athletes. The whereabouts requirements, as you can see, are very similar. Both TP and RTP athletes need to submit a mailing and an email address, a phone number, an overnight accommodation, training activities, competitions, and any additional information which could enable any anti-doping organization to locate an athlete for testing without prior notice, such as travel schedules, for example.
Thank you, Kate. And I would say now that we got a good understanding of these different requirements, let's go back to Krisztina. And perhaps, Krisztina, this question goes for you. Where and how did you submit your whereabouts information?
So when it comes to sharing whereabouts information, athletes like me have a couple of choices. They can use Athlete Central or ADAMS, which is the anti-doping administration and management system from WADA. They are both important tools to help athletes meet their whereabouts requirements properly and smoothly.
All right. Well, thank you, Krisztina. Indeed, Athlete Central and ADAMS are the most common tools to submit the whereabouts information. So let's briefly talk about ADAMS and Athlete Central. Athlete Central is an app from WADA that it's really user-friendly. In this app, athletes can provide accurate details about their daily activities, training sessions, accommodation, and competition schedules. It is designed to make, I would say, things easier for athletes, allowing them to give accurate information about where they are and what they are up to. A lot of athletes like this app because it's simple and it's easy to use, and also because the app offers notification reminders. This helps athletes to update their whereabouts information, of course, on time and before the deadline. Finally, also Athlete Central is available to download anywhere in the world. So athletes around the world can just go and download the app. Now let's move to ADAMS, who is another platform not only for submissions of whereabouts. ADAMS, as we previously mentioned, stands for Anti-Doping Administration and Management System. It is a comprehensive platform, of course, developed by WADA. And I would say one of the primary functions of ADAMS is also to facilitate the athletes' the submissions of whereabouts information. Athletes can use this platform to give also the details about their location, training, and competition schedules, and so on. Perhaps the most important thing to note and to remember is that no matter which platform an athlete goes for, the most important is that the athlete feels comfortable with that platform and that the athlete makes sure that he or she is updating their whereabouts on time. Whether you choose ADAMS or Athlete Central app, the goal is to get those whereabouts information on time and accurately. Now, now that we have, I would say, an understanding on how to do this, I'm also interested to know if, Krisztina, if at some point you ever faced any surprises during your career, meaning that you had to make any last-minute changes. How did you manage these situations of unexpected changes?
Well, I always try to proactively ask for information from our national federation related to the training camp address or our accommodation address during competitions. In several cases, we just found out about the address in the last minute. So I had to make last minute changes in ADAMS. But I had some stressful situations as well when I had no internet connection or no access to the system. In this case, as long as the access to my ADAMS profile is not regained, I was just informing my national anti-doping agency about my location and about the 1 hour time slot. And this seemed to be a correct solution as long as the technical issue has been solved.
Thank you, Krisztina. And with, I would say, all the changes in your training schedule, how did you manage to keep everything always sorted out on time and accurately and avoid mistakes? Perhaps any tips that you would like to share with us and with the audience joining us today?
Yeah, I collected 3 main recommendations. So the first one is don't leave your whereabouts updates for the last minute. Even if for us athletes, it's the easiest to focus only on our trainings. We need to keep this in our mind because forgetting about this obligation may be risking our sports career. My second recommendation would be if you feel like you're getting stuck with the whereabouts updates, try to get back to the instructions. Everything is written there, even if the amount of information looks scary and too much for the first sight. Just be patient, go through the whole document again, and you might find the answer and the next step in there. And my third recommendation would be if you really get stuck at any part of the process, you should ask immediately your national anti-doping agency for support or advice. Usually they are there for us athletes. And my experience is that I always received an answer within a day when I had any kind of questions or issues to solve.
Thank you, Krisztina. And there's also something I'm really curious about that we haven't discussed yet. Did you ever took a break from your sport, perhaps a year to explore the world, if that's something that you have experienced? I'm curious to know about what happened with your whereabouts information during that time. Did you have to reach out to your anti-doping organization to kind of let them know I'm taking a break, or how does that process work?
I personally, I never took a break from sport. There were some years when I was not included into the testing pool, but it was not my own decision. But there are several life situations when an athlete decides to retire. So I would be happy to explain what happens when an athlete decides to retire from sport. So when an athlete makes this decision to retire from their competitive career, it marks a significant transition in their journey. It's not just about stepping away from the field. It also involves various administrative and organizational aspects, especially in the context of anti-doping and the athlete's whereabouts obligations. So retiring from sport means that an athlete is no longer actively participating in competitions and training. This decision can be due to a variety of reasons, such as pursuing new opportunities, injuries, or simply feeling that the time is right to move on in life. But from an anti-doping perspective, when an athlete retires, they need to formally communicate this decision to the relevant anti-doping organization, which could be their national anti-doping organization, the international federation, or a third party like ITA. This communication is crucial because it affects their status within the anti-doping system.
Thank you, Krisztina. And let me go back to Kate. Kate, perhaps this next question goes for you. Considering the anti-doping side of things, what details should athletes include when they let the organization know about their retirement?
Sure. So all athletes who wish to stop competing for some time or retire simply need to inform their IF, NF, and NATO by email and clearly state their decision to retire. They will also need to specify the date from which their retirement will be in effect. If no date is provided, then the date on which you informed us of your retirement will be considered as the official retirement date, after which you will be no longer required to submit whereabouts. Also, please make sure to let the IF, NF, and the NADA know if you will be using a different phone number or an email after your retirement, in case they need to reach out to you for any follow-up or administrative matters.
Thank you, Kate. And then I have another question for you. What will be the process if in this, I would say, a scenario, Krisztina or any other athlete decides to come back to compete again? Are there like certain specific steps that someone will need to take?
So if an athlete decides to resume competing and return to their sport, the procedure remains the same. They would just need to inform their IF, NF, and NATO by email that they wish to reinstate. One thing to keep in mind is if an athlete retires while being included in the RTP, the registered testing pool, they would need to undergo a 6-month reinstatement period if they ever wish to come back. And during this 6-month period, they cannot compete and will be asked to file whereabouts information.
Thank you, Kate. And perhaps moving to another topic, and then I think we are also interested into knowing what has been your experience in working with RTP athletes and RTP submissions, whereabouts information. How does it work?
So I'm in contact with the athletes every day, and I respond to their queries related to whereabouts and testing pools, inclusion and exclusion processes, retirements, as well as reinstatements. I also assist them with their Adams accounts in case they have any technical issues or questions. In my personal experience, helping out and educating the athletes about these topics has been very positive and rewarding. There will always be some room for improvement, of course, but in a couple of years, I've seen a very positive shift in how the athletes take in and understand the importance of properly submitting their whereabouts and following up with different TP or RTP requirements. It may seem like such an ordinary and boring thing to do, but the athletes don't even realize how much they are contributing to a healthy sports culture and to fair play when they follow through with their whereabouts obligations and make themselves available for testing. Because when athletes diligently update their whereabouts, it builds a lot of trust within the sporting community and maintains the credibility of the sports we all love. So when athletes take ownership of their whereabouts submissions, they're not only safeguarding their own careers, but also playing a significant role in maintaining the integrity of sports for future generations. So it's definitely a collective effort which builds a lot of trust and true sportsmanship.
Thank you, Kate. And I must say that your message was truly impactful. And thank you for that. And of course, I would say also that we are fully aligned with your approach. Now, I'm really eager to find out more. Are there any difference in how athletes from different sports manage their whereabouts submissions? What is your experience on that?
While the core principles and requirements of whereabouts submissions remain consistent across sports, there can, of course, be differences in how athletes manage this process due to the unique nature of each sport. For example, sports with frequent competitions might have rigorous reporting requirements compared to those with less frequent events, and athletes in high activity sports might need to provide updates more frequently. The nature of training also varies among sports. Some athletes have centralized training facilities, while others might train in diverse locations. This could obviously impact how often they need to update their whereabouts as well. Another example are team sports. Athletes in team sports may have their whereabouts managed collectively as part of the team submission. This approach takes into account the team schedule rather than each individual's whereabouts. And also certain sports might have specific situations that require more tailored approaches. For instance, athletes in water-based sports might need to update their whereabouts for both water and land training sessions. Despite these variations, the overarching goal remains consistent to ensure that the athletes are available for testing and uphold the integrity of clean sport.
Thank you, Kate. This is really great information to know, and I'm sure all athletes and other sport personnel joining us today will find it quite helpful. Then, keeping the focus on athletes, what are the main questions that frequently they ask?
Usually, the athletes inquire about why they are being included in the RTP or TP, and also why they get excluded at some point. Also, many questions about atoms, of course, especially if an athlete never used the system before and if they have never been part of a testing pool or a registered testing pool. So yeah, it's a little bit hard to summarize. We get a variety of questions depending on how familiar an athlete is with all of these things.
Thank you, Kate. What about if you also share some things if athletes might do accidentally or they don't do properly? Anything particular that you would like to highlight?
Yes, so the most common mistake is probably the silliest one. For example, an athlete fills out their whole schedule for every day for the next 3 months and then simply forgets to click on the submit button. Other common mistakes would include indicating incomplete addresses. By this, I mean forgetting to indicate a house or an apartment number or a postal code. Sometimes athletes also forget to submit an entry which is part of their whereabouts requirements as a TP or an RTP athlete. Something I would recommend to the athletes who were recently included in a testing pool is to copy and paste the whereabouts requirements from the inclusion letter into a notes app, for example, on their laptop or a smartphone, and use it kind of as a checklist, at least in the beginning when they're getting used to the process.
Thank you so much, Kate, for your feedback, and I'm confident that athletes will certainly avoid these common mistakes in their upcoming whereabouts submissions. Well, now that we have covered the essentials of whereabouts submissions, it's time to, I would say, go deeper into the practical side of this topic. In the next section, we are thrilled to bring you a few videos that are quite helpful for you. These videos demonstrate the step-by-step process of making a flawless whereabouts submission while using ADAMS and Athlete Central. So grab your notebooks, get ready to learn, and let's play the videos.
Hi, my name is Kate and I'm a member of the testing team at the International Testing Agency. In this tutorial, we will show you how to use ADAMS Calendar and submit your whereabouts.
After logging into ADAMS, please click on Whereabouts in the menu on the left, select the quarter that you would like to update and click on New. Let's start by submitting your overnight accommodation. You will need to provide full address of your overnight location. Please mention the exact street name and number, city, country, region, and postal code. Make sure to also provide any specific additional information that could help the DCO to locate you, such as the code to the building, floor, and apartment. Afterwards, please select the category, which in this case is the overnight accommodation. Select the duration and recurrence of this entry as well. If you prefer, you may also choose this address as the location for your 60-minute time slot. Simply select a time slot between 6 a.m. and 11 p.m. when you will be available for testing. Let's proceed with another example, which will be submitting your regular activities. The process is exactly the same. Make sure to provide full and valid addresses of each location where you will be training, working, or conducting any other regular activity during the quarter. If you didn't select a 60-minute time slot in the overnight accommodation entry, you may also do it in your regular activities entry. You can always select an entry and click on Edit if you wish to modify it. You may choose to update an occurrence or the entire series. You can also delete an entry by selecting it and clicking on Delete. You may choose to delete an occurrence or the entire series. Now let's say you have a long-distance overnight travel. You will need to click on New and select the travel entry in the address field. This entry should only be used if you are unable to provide a 60-minute time slot for an overnight accommodation. Please select your transportation type and provide all the relevant information about your travel. After updating your whereabouts, do not forget to click on the Submit button in the top left corner of your screen. Make sure it is written that your whereabouts are submitted.
We hope that you enjoy that video, and now let's move to another video to see how Athlete Central app works. Alright, so this is the Athlete Central app. As you can see, it's quite easy to navigate and it's very user-friendly. Let's start this short tutorial with adding a time slot. Here there is an example where we are selecting the date. Then we are selecting the start time. You can also have recurring entries as well, so you don't need to add one for each day manually. Another nice feature is that you can save addresses, so you can add them quite quickly. Next, there is an example of an entry of regular activity. You can put in your training, maybe even a physio if it's something that it's a regular activity for you or for the driver. You can also choose how often the driver is doing this activity during the quarter. And finally, here you can see all other entries. If you are an RTP driver, remember to always make sure to have your 60-minute time slot. So if there is competition, you can put in an entry for your competition, your overnight accommodation, your travel entries, You can see here there is a caution sign that explains how to put a travel entry. And finally, you can also put additional or other information if you want to do so. So there you go, you have a short demonstration of the Athlete Central app. We encourage all the drivers and driver support personnel joining us today to download the app if you haven't done so already. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed the videos and found them useful. And now, thank you all for your, I would say, attention. It's now to move to our interactive activity. This is where we will put your knowledge of ADAMS and following your whereabouts information into practice. For everyone in the audience, I encourage you to join this part of the webinar using a laptop. Perhaps if you use your mobile phone, you will find the pictures quite small. So I would like to welcome back Kate to help us in this exercise, and let's give it a go to the first one. All right, on the next slide, you will see here we are putting in an address in ADAMS. And the question is, how can this entry be improved? You have 4 options. Number 1, to add a second phone number. Number 2, to add a location address. Number 3, to include the exact training location within the stadium. Or number 4, to include your workout plan for the day. Remember that this is a multiple choice question and you can select more than one option. And Kate, I hope that you are seeing the answers coming in. Let's close the poll and let's give the floor to Kate so she can share her thoughts about this case.
So the 2 correct answers are number 2 and number 3. Add the location address and include the exact training location within the stadium. So well done, everybody. In this case scenario, you can see 2 different whereabouts entries of an athlete's training location. Both may seem complete at a first glance. However, the one on the left is lacking some important details. As we can see in the submission on the left, the athlete included the label, which is the training camp, and also mentioned the name of the stadium where he is training. But he omitted the actual address of the venue in the address line 2. In this particular situation, providing the name of the stadium and its address is not entirely sufficient because stadiums are pretty big venues, and so the athletes would also need to provide a bit more information on where they could be located at that stadium. This is why the whereabouts submission on your right is the correct way of providing accurate whereabouts, because it contains the address of the stadium, the exact hall where the athlete is training. So all of this will easily allow the ITA or any other anti-doping organization to locate the athlete.
Thank you, Kate, for your feedback. Let's move on to our second case scenario. In this case, we have an athlete who might be facing a little bit of a challenge. In this specific case, the feedback that we got from the athlete was that she was always with a very busy agenda, and she tended to have changes quite in an unexpected situation. When she reached out for guidance, she was not sure about the right time to set aside for the 60-minute time slot. So let's dig into this scenario and find a solution. And here the question is, what will be your recommendation to her? Select an hour during her daily training. Select an hour before she starts. Perhaps select an hour before she goes to bed, or all of the above are possible options. Let's give a couple of seconds. Let's close the poll and I will give the floor to Kate so she can explain a little bit more of this case scenario.
So all the recommendations mentioned in this poll could work. It all comes down to the athlete's personal preferences and what is more convenient for them. If you were to ask me, I personally think the best choice would be to set a 60-minute time slot either before she starts her day or before she goes to bed. And I will now explain why. Looking at her calendar, potentially she could select an hour during her daily trainings or during work. However, the athlete mentioned that sometimes her training location changes, so she needs to modify her calendar pretty often. And another concern was that she wouldn't want to be interrupted during her workouts and work, which is completely understandable. This is why what we usually recommend to the athletes with very dense schedules is to set their 60-minute time slot in their overnight accommodation entry when they are sure to be at home. This could be an hour before they go to bed or an hour in the morning before they start their day. So, for instance, we can propose an option which is displayed on your screen right now. An athlete may use a category called Other and choose to have a 60-minute time slot between 6:30 and 7:30 a.m. while she's still at home and before she leaves for her training at 8 a.m. She could also indicate a 60-minute time slot in the evening in her overnight accommodation after she's sure to be back from work or her physio sessions.
All right, thank you, Kate. Let's try another one. As you can see here, we are putting also an address in Adams. And the question is, how can this entry be improved? And you have 4 options: to add a number, add the security code of the main door, to add the house number and the postal code, and or perhaps include your workout plan for the day. Let's give just a couple of seconds to the audience, and let's close the poll and share the results with our attendees. And Kate, what do you think about this case?
Well done, everyone. The correct answer is indeed to add the house number and the postal code. The first entry was not ideal because it didn't contain the house number and the postal code, which would make locating an athlete very difficult. If we compare this entry to the second one, we can clearly see that it is way more complete. It contains very detailed and useful information, such as the floor, the apartment number, the building code, etc. So the winner is definitely the second submission.
All right, let's try one more. As you can see here, we're still in Adams, and in this case, we have a travel entry marked as non-compliant. What do you think the travel entry is marked as non-compliant, specifically about 7th of August? Because the athlete didn't provide any regular activities, because the athlete didn't submit a 60-minute time slot, or perhaps because the athlete didn't submit any competitions, or none of the above are correct. And I can see so far the most popular is number 2. So Kate, over to you to discuss the answers, and let's close the poll.
Exactly. The correct answer is that the athlete didn't submit a 60-minute time slot, and this is why his whereabouts are marked as non-compliant. What is important to know about the travel entry is that it's only intended to be used when an athlete can't provide a 60-minute time slot and an overnight accommodation. In other words, for long travel journeys. In this case, the system marked the whereabouts as non-compliant because the athlete does have time to submit a 60-minute time slot before his travel, which starts at 12 p.m.
All right, then, thank you, Kate. And let's go straight to the best practice scenario with different entries such as training, massage, physio, travel dates. We have removed conflicted entries and so on. Kate, I will also, let's stay with you. You are the expert in whereabouts. So what will be your top tips when using Adams now that we know how to do it properly?
So the first tip is to make sure to log into the web version of Adams first when setting up your account for the first time. And afterwards, you will be able to use the Athlete Central app on your phone. The next reminder is to mind lowercase and capital letters when entering your username and password. And now we will move to more technical / IT tips. We really advise to use Microsoft Edge when working with Adams. If you ever feel like Adams is too slow or is not operating properly, what might help is tweaking a few settings in the browser, such as clearing the cache. You would need to click on the 3 dots in the top right corner of your browser, go to Privacy, Search and Services, and click on Choose What to Clear. A new window will appear where you will need to deselect everything except for cached images and files, and then click on Clear Now. You might also need to allow pop-ups in your browser. Once again, all you would need to do is to click on the 3 dots in the top right corner of your browser, go to Cookies and Site Permissions. A new window will appear again where you would need to click on Add and type in the address of the Adams website. Another useful tip, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, but I felt like it would be good to include it, as sometimes we get queries from athletes asking us to check their calendars and explain why their whereabouts are non-compliant. This is something that can be checked very easily from your side. Simply go to your calendar and hover over a day which is marked in red to find out what exactly is missing in your whereabouts. And last but not least, it's more of a reminder to make use of the section called My Address Book, which can be accessed via your whereabouts calendar in Adams. It allows the athletes to get quick, easy access to all the addresses they use on a regular basis, make any modifications or create new addresses, and then easily apply them when filling out the calendar.
All right, thank you, Kate. I'm sure all athletes and athletes support personnel will find these tips very, very useful. Let's move to another question, which because we're running out of time. What will you do in this last-minute situation? For example, imagine you are in this. You are on your way to the outdoor track for training, and it starts raining. Your coach sends you a message saying that you will train at another location indoors. However, your 60-minute time slot says that you will be at the outdoor track. And unfortunately, at that specific moment, your phone is out of data. You don't have the right amount of internet connection. So how can an athlete make a last-minute call on their whereabouts? Using WhatsApp, using an SMS to any ATO, a phone call, or they don't have to do anything. So far, the most popular is SMS followed by a phone call and then WhatsApp. Kate, any thoughts on this one?
In this particular situation, since the athlete's phone is out of data and he can't use Adams or the Athlete Central app, the best solution would be to update his whereabouts using the SMS function.
All right, Kate. What if you take us through the SMS function? How does it work?
Sure. So the first thing which you will need to do is to log into your Adams account and click on your name in the top right corner. You will then need to enter a valid phone number and click on Use SMS. You will then receive a message from Adams asking you to send a 3-digit number on their phone number. Adams will then send you a follow-up message when the activation is confirmed. After that, you may proceed to send any changes to your schedule via SMS. And your whereabouts updates will be displayed in your Adams calendar as an attachment in a list view and history tabs.
All right, thank you, Kate, for those practical insights about the SMS function. We're running out of time. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No,
One last thing I just wanted to mention is that please note that the SMS function is to be used in exceptional last-minute circumstances only, when you don't have access to the internet and can't access Adams on your PC or your smartphone.
Thank you, Kate. Actually, that's a very, very important point. And as I was just mentioning, I think those practical insights from you about the SMS function are very, very important, just in case an athlete finds a situation like trying to update a last-minute change on their schedule. So let's try the last poll question of today's session so we can wrap up. And the question is that you are seeing off your screen. What happens if I don't submit my whereabouts information? Is this an ADRV? Is this a missed test, or this is considered as a filing failure, or none of the above? Let's close the poll and share the results with the audience. And Kate, what do you think about this one?
So there are several consequences of not respecting whereabouts obligations. Firstly, any athlete who is included in the RTP and who submits late, inaccurate, or incomplete whereabouts that lead to them being unavailable for testing may receive a filing failure. Also, any athlete who is included in the RTP may receive a missed test if they are not available for testing during a 60-minute time slot. This means that even when athletes submit complete information and on time, they must be in the right location and at the right time.
All right, so for everyone in the audience, that means that 3 whereabouts failures, any combination of a filing failure and a missed test occurring in a 12-month period, will lead to an anti-doping rule violation and a potential 2-year ban from sport. And you can see why it's so important to understand, submit, and update your whereabouts information on time. One final point to mention, athletes may wish to have someone to complete their whereabouts, as Kate mentioned at the beginning of the session. This is totally fine, but please remember that athletes remain personally responsible for this, both for the accuracy of the information and that the deadlines are respected. So now let's wrap up the session and let's go to the useful tips for athletes. And I would like to welcome Krisztina to share some tips for athletes when submitting the whereabouts information.
Hello again. So there are several important points what all athletes should pay attention about. One is enable athlete central notifications. You may put a reminder in your calendar or phone with the quarterly whereabouts submission deadlines, so you don't forget about it. You can set an alarm for the start of your 60-minute time slot, so you can make sure that you are where you say you are. If you choose a 60-minute time slot early in the morning and might be sleeping, make sure you will hear the doping control officer. Be specific and detailed when submitting your whereabouts information, and regularly check and update your contact information. When you have any doubts, don't hesitate to ask for help.
Thank you, Krisztina. And wrapping up now, I want to leave with some useful links. These are the main places I will point you out if you want to know more about today's topic. Let's move on to our live questions from the audience. And I can see that we have a lot to cover. And perhaps the first question from Samantha. Can Whereabout system be accessed from any web-enabled device? Thanks to Samantha. Kate, what do you think about this one?
Yes, definitely. So Atoms can be accessed either from your personal computer or from your smartphone.
Okay, let's move to the next one. How do we become part of a testing pool?
So athletes may be selected to become part of a testing pool based on various criteria and many different factors, such as the athlete's competition results, the athlete's testing history, whether their sport or the country which they're representing are considered as high risk, for example, in terms of anti-doping. Athletes will receive an official notification of inclusion, and they will be required to submit and update whereabouts in Atoms, during which these athletes can be subject to testing on a no advance notice basis.
Thank you, Kate. The next question from Robert Miller. What are the key purposes of collecting athletes' whereabouts information in anti-doping efforts? And if Kate, maybe I can take this one. I guess the primary purpose of collecting the whereabouts information for any anti-doping organization are first to conduct unannounced and out-of-competition testing. This will ensure that athletes can be tested when they are not competing. This means being tested at any time, at anywhere. Also, as we mentioned earlier in the session, to uphold the different values of fair and competing clean. And by doing, of course, the whereabouts submissions, we are sure to keep the sports fair for everyone. Let's tackle 2 more questions and then wrap up the session. And the next question, just give me 1 second, is from Artem. What are the minimum required whereabouts information for athletes from testing pool? Many thanks.
TP athletes need to submit a mailing and an email address, phone number, an overnight accommodation, trainings, and competitions. Also, any additional information such as travel schedules or any other information that could help an anti-doping organization to locate you without prior notice. One thing to note is that TP athletes do not need to provide a 60-minute time slot compared to the RTP athletes.
All right, we're running out of time. Then if you still have questions or if anything wasn't answered today, you can always reach us at education@ita.sport. And this wraps up the webinar. I hope you are now feeling more prepared for submitting your whereabouts. A big thank you to Kate and of course Krisztina, and of course you athletes and athlete support personnel joining us today. This is it. A big thank you again, and have a good rest of your day. Thank you, Kate and Krisztina, and thank you for everyone attending today's session. See you next time.